Meet me on the softer side. Meet me on the softer side. Softer side of your heart.
Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. You can find out about this and all of our other author events at www.skylightbooks.com, where you can also browse our inventory as well as order books online. You can also follow us on Twitter or even be our friend at facebook.com. If you'd like to talk to a real person, we can be reached at 323-660-1175. And don't forget, Skylight Books depends on listeners like you to help support us. So whether you're in our neighborhood or browsing online, buy a book or two to help ensure that we'll be around for a long, long time. Thanks and enjoy.
So I'll just read a few pages of this. Sebastian said his father needed money for a saw and a lathe and a level so he could start a new business as a carpenter. He said he knew a man whose father had a tumor the size of a small grapefruit on his prostate. He said he needed money to take out the tumor in the prostate. This is the right thing to read, right, about the prostate tumor?
It's the perfect thing to read, yeah.
Let me see this man, I said. Take me to see this man. We walked down into Sebastian's village. Don't be alarmed, Sebastian said, when you see their eyes. All the members of the family had a degenerative eye disease. They all went blind by age 25. My friend is 23, Sebastian said. You can see it already. The disease is eating his eyes. There were 8 small children, 2 teenage girls, Sebastian's friend and his father and mother, both of whom were in their 70s. Sebastian's friend was a very late child. A miracle child, I said. A shame and a burden, Sebastian said. The teenage girls and the children were sons and daughters of sons and daughters and grandsons and granddaughters who had long since fled for the city. These were the unwanted children or the too many children or the children taken early by blindness. Sebastian's friend was working for tips at the Hotel Kinam to bring in money and tending the garden in the mornings. When he was gone, people stole from the garden. There was no one in the family able enough to do anything about it. We greeted Sebastian's friend. My friend, he said, my good friend, you will come see my father. He led us through a maze of banana trees, past the 100-year-old stone house, to the unfinished concrete house at the back of the property. It had holes for windows and a hole where the roof would go. The old man sat shaking in a chair at the center of the one room. Piles of construction sand filled the 4 corners. The old man leaned on his cane and shook. He waved us near him and spoke. He had the breath of brown death. After he said half a sentence, he paused to catch his breath, and Sebastian translated. I saw you in a dream, he said. Bondier sent you from America. Your journey took you over the sea. You are estranged from your mother. You are wearing glasses, and you have beautiful shoes. Most of these things were true. Bondier said, this man will come, he said. You will show him your wound. He will lay hands on your wound, and your wound will be healed. He pushed on his cane. With some effort, he sat upright in his chair. With his shaking hand, he handed the cane to his son. With great effort, he reached both hands to his pants button and the zipper. He said, I will show you. He unbuttoned his pants and he unfastened his zipper. With both hands, as if presenting a bouquet of flowers, he held himself out to us. What he showed was mostly tumor. His penis and his testicles had shriveled to a flaccid tininess. Most of his hair had fallen away. Only a slight smear of peach fuzz remained, and it was slick with a yellowish-white discharge from a suppurating wound that was on the tumor but not of the tumor. Bondier said, the old man said again, this man will come. You will show him your wound. He will lay hands on your wound, and your wound will be healed. Everyone was looking at me. Sebastian with his good eyes, the man's son with his cataracting, failing eyes, the old man with his blind eyes. Even the tumor seemed like a giant, dying eye. The man's son was nodding as if to say, go ahead. Sebastian was watching as if to see what kind of man I was after all our time together. I held out my hands. I cupped them as if I were preparing to draw water from the river. I put them on either side of the tumor. My right wrist grazed the old man's tiny penis, and my left wrist grazed his testicles. The skin swollen by the tumor was hot, and the skin covering the genitals was as cold as a slab at the morgue. You must pray, the son said. Our Father who art in heaven, I said. It wasn't a prayer to the sky. It was a prayer to the people in the room. If there was any belief to borrow, it was all theirs. But then I couldn't remember the rest of the words to the prayer, even though it was the most famous prayer in the world. In my mind, it had become conflated with a less famous poem by an American who had once been my teacher at the university. Our Father, who art in heaven, I am drunk. Again, red wine, for which I offer thanks. I ought to start with praise, but praise comes hard to me. I stutter. I had not memorized the whole poem, but I did remember the ending, the beautiful ending. The drunk, praying, thinks of himself as an old-time cartoon character, a poor jerk who wanders out on air and then looks down. Below his feet he sees eternity, and suddenly his shoes no longer work on nothingness, and down he goes. The drunk prays, as I fall past, remember me. It seemed as fitting a prayer as the one I had forgotten. I cobbled together bits and pieces of both and drew on the language of special pleading I remembered from all those dreary years at the Baptist church. I used the words suppurating and grapefruit and hot and cold and shrivel and shrink. When I was done, nothing happened. Everyone was as blind or cataracted or tumored or lying or despicable as we had been before we prayed, and my hands were wet with white and yellow pus. I told the old man I was sorry. Nothing happened. He had not been healed. I must not be the man Bondier had sent from over the sea. He said, we must wait. Bondier's time is not our time. Outside, I asked Sebastian, how much is the surgery? Sebastian said, all surgeries are $300. I said, I have $400 in my pocket. I'm going to give it all to him. Sebastian said if you give him $400 for his surgery, they will use it to buy sand in Portland, or they will use it to buy a window, or they will use it to buy corrugated aluminum for a roof. The old man will die soon no matter what you do. What can I do? I said. You can give the money to me, Sebastian said. I will take it to pay the doctor, and I will pay the tap-tap to take him to the doctor. I looked at him and I knew. He would take the money and put it in his pocket, and I would never see him again. Or I would see him again the next time he wanted some money. No, I said. No. I put the money back in my pocket and vowed to return after we did the count in Mirabelais in 3 weeks, pick up the old man myself, take him to the hospital myself, pay for the surgery myself. In later years, a woman told me, who do you think you are to play God? I said, I only wanted to save this one man for a little while. I knew he was going to die soon. 3 weeks passed. We returned to the village. Another casket, a cheap one, was marching up the street. So many of the pallbearers were blind. Don't worry, Sebastian said. You took his tumor in your hands. But I didn't cut it out, I said. You should have given me the money, he said.
Thanks. That was really good.
Yeah, that ruined everybody's day.
No, it was good. It was good. I have a hard, because the things I'm writing lately are pretty gross. Do you find that it's hard, that you write a lot of gross things at once and then you have to read them out in public?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's because the world is full of gross things,
Right.
you know. I mean, even like if we just all went and took off our clothes
Yeah.
and compared ourselves to each other,
That'd be kind of gross.
yeah, we'd see some things.
Yeah, yeah. So you couldn't unsee them.
Do you guys want to?
Yeah, maybe later. There's children. There's children here. So, can you talk about the process of writing that piece in particular, briefly, like how long it took, and maybe like how quickly or slowly you wrote it, how much you edited, or how little, or you know.
Well, it took. I went down to Haiti for 5 summers, and that's all I came away with. At first, just one short story.
Yeah.
I was trying to write poems, and they were terrible. And then I put them all together and then I started to see they were all about the same thing, which is I'd often spend the summer just walking up and down mountains with people that at first I didn't know well, and the primary reason that they walked with me was to try to get money from me. But then we'd become friends, and then they would give me money. But then I wouldn't know what to do with that either.
With the fact or with the money?
With everything,
Okay.
because the imbalance of everything was so apparent all the time, and you're starting to love people at the same time, and you don't know what to do, and you can leave whenever you want, and the people that you care about can't leave, and sometimes you would come back and some of them would be dead. So that story kind of came out of that process.
You got a lot of nonfiction out of that time, right?
Yeah, well, I originally went down to work on a screenplay about a restvek, which is it's a word that means stay with. It's like a system of domestic servitude for children in Haiti, a traditional system where parents from the mountains that have like 12 kids might send 4 of the kids to a relatively more well-off person's house in the city to do like gardening or household chores in exchange for education, but it never works out very well. And you see a lot of kids get turned out to prostitution or gardening for some reason. And so I was really kind of gung-ho about that project, but also in order to get into it, I was reading a lot of Haitian history and literature, and it was the countries are really like literary history. Like it was the only slave revolution that ever took, and then one of the rallying cries of the Constitution is, we'll dip our quills in the inkwell of the skull filled with the blood of the white man, which is pretty great.
It's pretty hardcore, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unless if it's your skull.
Right.
And so and also a shadow history of the United States, right? I mean, the reason that Thomas Jefferson was able to get the Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon was because the Haitians had turned away, against all odds, Napoleon's navy, and he kind of gave up on the New World and then disastrously marched on Russia. It's full of those kind of things, and a concurrently like very, very rich literature. So I was excited, and then I found out, as you will often find out if you do any kind of screenwriting work, that everybody just lies to you all the time. Oh, yeah. And it turns out that the director had never secured the option of the project that I worked on for 9 months. Right. So, but I just went down anyway. I found somebody who knew somebody and flew into Port-au-Prince with the ticket that I had. Found myself riding a truck up a mountain to a village, an agricultural village in West Province. I'd never been before, and I slept outside the first night, began to meet people, and then I just kept going back and fell in love with the place. So it's kind of an accident.
So what do you find that fiction can do that nonfiction can't do, or vice versa, and you can add screenwriting into that if you feel like it?
Well, I think it's a lot easier to tell the truth if you're writing fiction, because you aren't exposed to libel suits, and also because what a story is not like a collection of events or facts. It's like a human being that's chasing some kind of question, like what was all that? I mean, not all kinds of stories, but one kind of story. And if you're chasing that question and you have the freedom to invent things that bolster the pursuit of that, in addition to sort of the germ of the thing, it's easier to get there. I think with nonfiction, you can get away with being glib a lot more easily, and in fact, sometimes that's the job. Sometimes the place that you write for doesn't really want you to be terribly incisive. So the freedom is not often the same. And then also, the very best nonfiction writers are often as good or better than many of the best fiction writers. But I think there's a lot more fiction writers and poets that can really bring it in terms of language and sentence making and things in ways that appeal to me more.
I find that nonfiction writing is sort of like being a scientist more than being a fiction writer. Like, you have to have a hypothesis, and you go in and you can kind of test it, and it's proven or disproven. Like, I interviewed Selena Gomez, and I thought it was going to be a certain kind of thing, and then maybe it would go in this direction, and then it forced itself into this other direction. And I'm a pretty bad nonfiction writer and a pretty bad scientist, I imagine, because I really wanted to push it in that other direction.
Well, and you're also limited by how much access you have to Selena Gomez,
right?
And that's where the fiction writer is lucky, because they can because you have certain impressions, right? You can say there seems to be a distance between the story that the person that this person is telling me about their life and the thing that seems to be readily apparent, but I have no way to really get into. But I mean, that's not, that's kind of bullshit too, everything I just said.
Yeah,
because,
forget it.
Because you do have all the full resources of your intelligence when you write nonfiction. I mean, it's just harder. It takes more time.
It's very hard, yeah.
And it's more work to get to the deepening place, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to sort it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like really good nonfiction writers in the audience,
not
so I'm
gonna say
feeling
who.
very nervous now.
There's actually a lot of writers in the audience, and I've just tried to forget that they're there at all, so I don't get super nervous. But there are good screenwriters and short fiction writers and nonfiction and nonfiction, so it's just everything, and they're all staring at us. It's okay. It's okay. So, no, you write about Florida, you write about Haiti, and you write about Kentucky, and these are all places that you know pretty well in your real life. I'm wondering if you ever write fiction about places that you don't know at all.
Yeah, I'm working on I went down to Huntsville, Texas, a few weeks ago, down to the Texas State Penitentiary.
Oh, yeah.
Which is where more people were executed than anywhere else in the United States. And I got these like big picture books. They're amazing. These two photographers got to be friends with the warden, and they got full access for about 20 years into the prison. And there's no text to them. And so there's pictures from inside cells, from the prison rodeo. There's a picture that I think they busted David Crosby for drugs just so they get to play guitar at the prison rodeo. You know, so there's that. And chain gang pictures. And I feel like maybe now I know enough about what I'm doing to write out of that little and know some things. But I want to know some things, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't necessarily, even the surreal things in this book, which are sort of supernatural, are out of just like the fucked upness of my childhood. You know, these traveling preachers used to come to town, and they'd like play Beatles records backwards, like they play Tomorrow Never Knows backwards, and it would say, "He is the nasty one, Christ, you're infernal." You know, it was very scary because there was a demon inside the record.
Yeah.
They would say if we went to see the movie Gremlins, that the gremlins would get inside the skin of our arms, and then while we slept, they would claw out, you know. And I was very concerned about my arms for a long time.
Wow.
Or if the sky turned red. When I lived in Florida, so the sky turned red every day, so it was very scary. You look to the eastern sky, and Christ would be arriving on a white horse, this time with a sword, and the graves would rip open, and all the dead righteous would rise, but they wouldn't get their they're like heavenly bodies yet, so it'd be a corpse army for a while.
Yeah.
And then if you didn't get to go with them, you'd be stuck behind for 7 years, and then like the local sheriff would chase you in UN helicopters through the mountains, and then you'd have to, and then they put you under the guillotine.
Yeah.
When I was 5 years old on New Year's Eve, I remember this. They showed us this movie on New Year's Eve after we had the potluck dinner with like the banana pudding and stuff, and the fireworks, and then they showed us this movie, and after the UN helicopters chased everybody through the mountains, this girl's head got under the guillotine, and then the blade fell, and then she started screaming, and the freeze frame stopped the guillotine like this far from her neck, but the screaming went on for like 90 more seconds, you know, and then just black for 90 more seconds, and then the lights came on, and then the preacher came up and he said, "Do you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that if you walked out the front door of this church," because the church was right on the main highway, "that if you walked out the front door of this church and a semi ran you over, that you would spend eternity with God or in the lake of fire," you know. Then he described the lake of fire for like 45 minutes, you know, and then everybody gave him money. and so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about I have all these stories, some of which are competing versions of one another, and some of which are only connected thematically. But I was thinking about what happened after that, which is the Great White Throne Judgment, which goes like this. It's a stadium the size of the whole world, but bigger, because it has to hold everybody who's ever been alive or dead. And the largest 16 millimeter film projector ever made, which is weird because they had 70 millimeter anamorphic, you know, like
throwback.
Apocalypse Now,
Right.
technology then, but it was like a low rent church.
Sure.
And then they would show like everything you ever did wrong, all your evil deeds, even your thoughts. And at 7 years old, I thought my thoughts were incredibly transgressive.
Oh, God.
But they're different now as I think about it. They're worse. But then as I got older, I thought, well, maybe not such a big deal after you see Genghis Khan's hordes like rape and kill everyone in like Asia and Europe and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then if you pass that test, then the sheep are divided from the goats. Now, up until now, everything's been literal, but this is a metaphor.
This is that. Okay.
You don't actually turn into a sheep or a goat.
Gotcha.
You just that means the people that go to heaven and the people at the lake of fire are the goats.
Gotcha.
So if you're one of the sheep, you go to heaven, but then you have to sing the same shitty songs that you had to sing at church.
Once you're in heaven?
Forever.
Oh my God.
And they give you crowns for the good things you do, but you don't get to keep them. You got to throw them at the foot of the throne.
Wow.
So I got to thinking that would be terrible, right? Because everything good in the world turns out to be attached to some kind of trouble. So I figured I'd just be stuck in some kind of like study carol in the back of heaven, like next to Joyce Carol Oates, just grinding it out, like back in the good old bad days when things were still possible.
Yeah.
And then I realized I have a book. That's what that is. This is narrated from heaven.
What do you think about that, Emerson?
Don't you feel I'm a father? Don't you feel sorry for my children?
No, I feel glad for everyone's children in the whole world.
Me too.
What do you think about that Emerson quote? God will not have His work made manifest by cowards.
Well, that seems like bullshit to me.
Why?
Well, because if there is a God, He sort of set everything up to stack the deck against everybody, and then life proceeds as an atrocity parade, and He lets it happen. He's the big coward, and then He empowers all the cowards to go speak in His name or something. I know that has nothing to do with what Emerson's quote actually means.
Right. Well, fine though. That's fine. What do you think about? Oh, I wanted to ask you actually about a weird obsessive thing you do or used to do. This is an intervention. So one thing that you do is that you read the entire catalog of writers that you admire. And so you've read the entire catalog of DeLillo, of Toni Morrison, William Faulkner, Alice Munro, John McPhee, Philip Roth, John Updike, Flannery O'Connor, Catherine Ann Porter, Eudora Welty, Milan Kundera, Cormac McCarthy, and Cynthia Ozick. That's a lot. How does it feel? Do you still do that?
No. Now I watch TV.
Cool.
Mostly.
No. So I'm going to assume you see your work in conversation with those writers. You see yourself as kind of coming in different parts of their catalogs, which are sometimes in progress, sometimes completed.
Well, one thing I learned by doing that, I did that when I was younger, and I was just very hungry, And also because I felt very inadequate to be a writer. I didn't start reading any literature till I was like 24. I studied to be a preacher, and I came from a people that have really no literary or intellectual tradition to speak of at all. Because fundamentalism, it works like this intellectually. There's an answer that preexists the question, and everything is reduced to that answer. Whereas what literature does, and any kind of really good intellectual pursuit, is it complicates. It raises more questions, and the place that you end up may not even be a place that you would have wanted to end up when you start asking the question. And so I guess I was trying to rewire my brain, and so I got three things out of it. The first thing is I learned how to make sentences, and I learned some things about structure, and I learned some things about how stories can go together, and which turned out to be a good thing when I went to graduate school, where I had a lot of teachers that wanted to shoehorn you into some kind of box. For me, having read all those books was a pathway to some freedom, because I realized literature could be anything, or like I like what the way Zadie Smith said, literature's a big tent. There's room under it for all kinds of acts. The second thing, I don't know, I'm accounting right. I said 3. The other thing is I got a sense of the trajectory of careers, Very often a writer would start out with childhood stuff and get a book of short stories out of it, or a novel, a really intense one, and then have to learn what to do next. And the next step was usually the imitation of some kind of supposed master. Like for writers of a certain generation, it was Henry James, who I don't ever want to have to read ever for the rest of my life.
You've read him already. Enough of him.
Not all of him,
Not all of him.
because not even the whole book can I get through finish.
He's a tough one.
Yeah, but then
It's the human scene, right?
what's that?
We're all in a home, like a house, looking on the human scene, different size windows and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't get that far.
I think it's okay.
Yeah, then the really good stuff is often like when the writer pushes through that and starts to make something singular, And so I thought, I want to do that. Like I want to make something that only I could make and no one else could make it. And then that's when I started to realize maybe there was some value in the world that I had come from, which really wasn't represented at all in any of the good books that I was reading. And now I'm sick of that world and I want to do something else.
So what next?
Well, I'm finishing a novel
Yeah.
set in Haiti called The Sexual Lives of Missionaries. And it's about, it's sort of the public version of the personal work that I've been doing. It's set during the Déchoucage uprising when Baby Doc Duvalier fell from power. That word means uprooting, and it was a literal uprooting. I mean, people would go, not just tear down the house, but pull up the plumbing and dig up the dead relatives and throw them in the street,
Wow.
So it's from that time.
Yeah.
And I actually met a lot of people, in Haiti who were alive during that time. In fact, some of the machetes, the Tontons macoute, that were like the shadow army beholden to the Duvaliers, is still alive. People are walking around, you might know them. That they're somebody's uncle or something. And after you go around a while, they might start to tell you the stories. It's amazing, right? The United States has a public history like that as well, but it's not in the street. And to get access to that world in that way taught me a lot about how the world is. And of course, all of that was propped up by us as well. So I've been working on that for about 7 years.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to get into a little bit of TV writing and screenwriting, and enjoying the first little pieces of that.
Yeah, I saw you on Facebook. You were calling for people to suggest screenplays and longer works for you to read.
Yeah,
And this was
when
a
I was
while
starting,
ago. This was a couple years ago.
Yeah, I read about 100 screenplays and about 50 pilots, and as many show bibles as I could this summer when I was working on a pilot, and it was great.
Yeah.
It's so much more fun than prose writing.
Sure. Yeah. What else? What did it teach you doing all that work?
It taught me. Well, you don't get interiority very much when you're writing in those kind of forms. So it was the opposite of everything that I'd been doing, and it was tremendously liberating. And I started to realize how fast things can move and how much you can do just by juxtaposition and cutting things out. How much ground you can cover, and I found it tremendously exciting.
Ah. Good, very good.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to open it up to the crowd a little bit. If you guys have some questions about anything that we talked about, or anything that has occurred to you remotely, J. Ryan.
You said you first started seriously pursuing literature. Who was the author of the book?
Kurt Vonnegut was the gateway drug. He was the
me
marijuana
too.
of literature for me.
What's your favorite?
Well, Slaughterhouse-Five is the great book. I really love this book called Breakfast of Champions.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That Vonnegut himself gave an F. He graded all his books.
He hated that book.
Yeah. But
I drew the assholes in that one.
Yeah, but I think it's the book about him wanting to commit suicide, too. This comes from a dark time.
Yeah.
So it probably tells me more about me than about him. That's my favorite.
That's a weird book.
I'll tell you the story of that, though. So I had quit 2 careers. I was homeless. And I started dating a woman who was also homeless. And she got a place, but she used to be a college professor. She shared it with a former student. It was a 80 square foot octagon-shaped house that a woman had built to house her doll collection. And there was a fold-out. It wasn't a sofa because there weren't enough cushions. It was like a love seat sofa.
Sure.
So I had 2, and they slept on that together, and I slept out in the yard in my car for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of this, but this is the truth. And then during the day, I didn't have anything to do because I thought I'd make it as a freelance writer, but I didn't have a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, but the other woman that lived there had a shelf of Kurt Vonnegut books, all of them. and they were arranged in chronological order. So I started with player piano. That's when I started doing that. And then when I got done, I heard that there was a writer named Don DeLillo who is just like Kurt Vonnegut, which turns out not to be true at all, right? It's like, couldn't be any more different.
Yeah.
So I read all of those, and I sort of ass backwards my way through
Yeah.
20th century American literature that way in about 3 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Why'd you guys break up, though?
No, we got married.
Oh.
We have children. We're still together.
Okay.
But she's not homeless anymore.
Oh, great.
I helped.
I did it. Good. Other cues?
How do you two know each other?
How do we know each other?
I don't know.
We met at a party,
Yeah, we met at a party in Denver, right?
right?
And you told me you liked my story, so I loved you forever.
Yeah.
My robot story,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
And then I got sent your book to review.
Which one?
Museum of the Weird.
Oh, okay.
And then I didn't review it. I just wrote a bunch of shit about what I thought.
Uh-huh.
But you seem to like that,
I
okay?
did like that. Well, I did like that a lot, yeah.
So that's how we met.
Yeah. I think we've only really hung
And then
out.
we just have awkward.
Super awkward
Like there was the time with
meetings.
all the condoms falling out of the pocket.
That's how we were
We shouldn't tell people about
No,
that.
that's a terrible story.
Any other questions for us?
Do you guys want to hear about that story? No? Cool. Well, that's...
All right, maybe last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what, from reading, like, catalog of a writer, I'm just curious, what writers do you feel like most sort of compelled by their evolution or their change or?
Well, I have an unpopular answer to that question, which is Philip Roth, who's probably the most vilified writer in America besides Jonathan Franzen.
Yeah.
But and also who wrote a lot of really terrible books. But something happened in like the middle to late 80s. He like grew up or something, and he went on a tear. And he wrote a bunch of really great books, one after the other, that formally were not like anything he'd done before, and from which I learned really quite a lot. So, but I wouldn't recommend reading all his books. I recommend reading him from like 1985 to like 1998 or something. Okay.
That's good.
Thank you guys for
Yeah,
coming
thanks,
out.
guys. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget that you can check out this and all of our other great podcasts at www.skylightbooks.com. Today's music was provided by Fragile Gang. You can check them out at MySpace, Facebook, and the iTunes Music Store. Thanks for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.